Cal Raleigh might be having one of the craziest drop-offs we've seen from a star player in a really long time. Because just look at where we were a year ago. This guy was coming off a season where he hit 60 home runs, drove in 125 runs, finished second in the AL MVP voting, and basically became one of the most feared hitters in baseball. And now we're sitting here in August watching Cal Raleigh hit 159. Not 259, not 229, 159. And somehow that number might not even tell the whole story of how bad the season has been. Because Cal Raleigh has gone from being one of the biggest power threats in baseball history last season to looking completely lost at the plate for huge stretches of the season. And at this point, even he isn't trying to pretend it's anything other than awful. Actually, that's exactly what he said. After the Mariners lost their fifth straight game on Tuesday, Raleigh was asked about his own performance and basically took the entire thing on himself. He said, "I'm awful." And honestly, I mean, what are you even supposed to say after that? You can't really argue with the man because the numbers are brutal. Through 86 games, Raleigh has just 12 home runs and 43 RBIs while hitting 159 with a 267 on base percentage and a 297 slugging percentage. His OPS is sitting around the mid 500s. Last year, he was almost one dotting. It was like 948. That's not like a little step backwards. I mean, you're not trying to like replicate last season. That would be pretty hard to do, but that's going from being one of the best hitters in baseball to just being one of the worst qualified hitters in the sport. And that's what makes this so bizarre, because when you look at Cal Raleigh's 2025 season, it almost doesn't even feel like we're talking about the same player. He hit 60 home runs, 60 as a catcher. He broke the single season home run record for catchers, led the major leagues in home runs and RBIs, and, very debatable, but he finished second in MVP voting. And he was basically the guy you wanted to come up with a big at bat. And now when he walks to the plate, you almost feel like Seattle fans are just hoping something good accidentally happens. And I don't mean that as a shot at him. It's just the reality of how dramatically things have changed. I think what's even more frustrating for Seattle is that this isn't happening to some random player hitting eighth in their lineup. This is Cal Raleigh. This is supposed to be one of the centerpieces of the team. And the Mariners desperately need him because their offense has been terrible for huge portions of the season. They've lost 15 of their last 20 games. They're 57-65, and they sit 5 games behind Houston in the AL West after yesterday's 1-0 win over the Yankees. So yeah, Seattle could really use the guy who hit 60 home runs last year to show up again. And yesterday against the Yankees was another example of the problem. The Mariners won the game 1-0, which sounds great, except their offense only produced 5 hits. And Raleigh went 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. The only run of the game came from Weston Wilson. Logan Gilbert threw 6 scoreless innings. The bullpen finished the job, and Seattle somehow walked out of Yankee Stadium with a win. But they only scored 1 run. That's been the Mariners' problem all season. And when your biggest offensive weapon is hitting 159, it becomes really difficult to consistently score runs. The crazy thing is that Raleigh actually gave himself pretty high expectations coming into the year, and you can't really blame him after hitting 60 home runs. Obviously, you're expecting to be good again and be in the MVP race. The problem is that baseball just doesn't really care what you did last year. Pitchers adjust, teams adjust, and suddenly the guy who looked almost impossible to pitch to is dealing with a completely different reality. And there have been a few different things going on with Raleigh this season. He had a rough experience with Team USA during the World Baseball Classic earlier this year, where he went hitless and eventually lost his starting role. He's also dealt with injury issues, including an oblique injury, but the frustrating part for Seattle is that his offensive problems started before all of that became, the obvious explanation. So there isn't really one simple answer where you could say, oh, he's hurt, that's why he's bad. If that were the case, you could understand it. You could wait for him to get healthy and assume the old Cal Raleigh is coming back. Instead, we're just sitting here trying to figure out why a guy who hit 60 home runs is now struggling just to get on base. And the power drop is especially insane. I'll keep saying it because, he hit 60 home runs last year and has 12 home runs this year. He's probably not even going to break 20 home runs on the season. He's on pace for around 17. That's a 43 home run drop, 43. That's the kind of number that sounds fake when you say it out loud. How could a hitter even have a 43 home run drop season to season without, being injured? But you could tell me he went from 60 home runs to 40, 30, and I'd be like, okay, that's still a massive drop, but, this big of a difference is insane to me. And, according to the numbers, his 574-ish OPS is the worst among qualified hitters in baseball. That's a part that really puts the season into perspective. We're not talking about a star who's gone from elite to, average. He's gone from one of the best hitters in baseball to the bottom of the qualified hitter leaderboard. And I think that's why the Mariners are in such a weird position right now, because they were supposed to be a contender. Last year, they were one game away from the World Series. They had one of the best stories in baseball with Raleigh becoming this ridiculous power hitting catcher. And now the entire team just looks completely different than last year. They're below 500. They're struggling to score. They're dealing with injuries. And their biggest offensive star is having one of the worst seasons imaginable. And Raleigh himself has just constantly acknowledged that all year. I mean, I think at a certain point, you could only talk to the media and be like, okay, yeah, I'm bad. But, there's just some kind of like urgency. He's not trying to make excuses. He knows he's been bad. And honestly, that's probably the best place to start, because I don't think he's suddenly this like terrible baseball player. I think there's another side of this. You don't accidentally hit 60 home runs. You don't accidentally finish second in MVP voting. And he was one of the most dangerous power hitters in baseball all time last year. So I'm not ready to say that this is who Cal Raleigh is now. I mean, I do think that last season was definitely an outlier, but it's also like, I mean, what player other than Aaron Judge right now is able to replicate those kind of seasons back to back? I think the more interesting question is whether, this is one unbelievably bad season, or whether, we're just seeing some like actual like fundamental changes in his game, because I think that's what we're going to find out over the next year. If he comes into 2027 and starts hitting the way we're accustomed to seeing him hit, then, this becomes one of those just bizarre seasons that everyone eventually laughs about. Remember when Cal Raleigh randomly hit 159 for a season? But if the power doesn't come back, I think this becomes like a much bigger problem, because Seattle needs him. And honestly, I just think at this point, Cal Raleigh just needs the season to end. Not because I think he's finished, but because, I think it's pretty clear he just needs like an off season and a reset. I don't think there's really anything that he could do down the stretch here to make his numbers look good for the season. He just, needs to maybe get a little bit more healthy. Obviously, every single baseball player is playing with some kind of like lingering injury or something like that most of the time. But the Mariners just can't afford for this to continue. They just losing streak after losing streak. Houston has taken the lead in division. We've heard that a million times over the years. This team is just trying to stay alive right now in a playoff race, which is getting harder and harder every week. You have a ton of teams surging. The Tigers, the Red Sox are playing good baseball. You just can't afford to lose games, because there's too many teams in the hunt for you to just kind of sneak in and not play good baseball. So yeah, I mean, at some point you're going to need that 2025 version of Cal Raleigh to show up if the Mariners are serious about making a run and getting into the playoffs this year. But yeah, I don't know. Something resembling him down the stretch would be nice, just so you could see that it's still there. But I do think this is one of the biggest stories in baseball right now. We've seen bad seasons before, obviously, from MVP caliber players, but it's just the magnitude of the drop. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think Cal Raleigh is going to bounce back and this is just one off a year, or do you think there's something seriously wrong with his game that Seattle needs to figure out? Because I mean, I'm not ready to give up on him, but I'm also not going to sit here and pretend this is like a little slump. I mean, this is going to be one of the worst seasons in baseball this year, if not the worst. Expectations-wise, definitely the worst. And obviously, a lot of people are going to say that, the 60 home runs is an outlier and him being the star hitter is an outlier, but this is just like a ridiculous drop-off. I mean, he should not be anywhere close to this. Even him being a league average player this year would have been an insane disappointment. And I completely understand. I think the main thing to also touch on is that Cal Raleigh has not been this like perennial MVP caliber player, but when you have a season like he did last year, you set high expectations to be at least one of the top 3 catchers in the game, and he's been the worst player in baseball. I mean, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I just think this needs to be talked about, and it's too late in the season for him to kind of make a comeback, and it's definitely disappointing. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you made it this far in the video, make sure to subscribe or follow. It helps the channel a ton. And leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.